Sir, please start the session.
Thank you. The session, आजको हाम्रो सेसन यहाँहरूलाई म यतातिर यसो ध्यान आकर्षण गरौँ. अशोक वाजपेयीजी हुनुहुन्छ. दिवसजी अहिले बाहिर हुनुहुन्छ होला, चिया लिएर आउनुहुन्छ होला. हामीहरू कार्यक्रम थालौँ. त्यो गेट पनि लगाइदिनु भयो हुन्थ्यो बाहिरको. This program, Ashokji, is billed as a central theme, India and Nepal, journey of civilizations and search for a soul. We have just been handed the mic and told to run. So here we are. We can get started. मेरो सुझाव के हुन्छ भनेदेखि अब केही साथीहरू आउँदै पनि हुनुहुन्छ. तुलसी दिवसी आउँदै हुनुहुन्छ, उहाँ आइपुगुन्जेल बाँकी पनि आइसक्नुहुन्छ होला. बाँकी अडियन्स छ नि त दाइ. भन्नुहोस्. वेलकम तुलसीजी. एन्ड अब हामीलाई यहाँ कुनै होइन होइन कहाँ त्यसरी हुन्छ र हामीले म निर्धारण गरिदिन्छु यहाँ बसी बसी. तपाईँ सबै गर्नु त उहाँ म चाहिँ अब मोडरेटर जस्तो भएँ यहाँ. तपाईँ सुरु गरिदिनुहोस्. ल ल. So here's how, since we have not been given any directions, I have happened to hold the mic, so I guess I will become moderator and presenter. इसीलिए मैं अब ऐसा करूँगा. दिल्ली से आए हुए सर्वमान्य कवि अशोक वाजपेयी जी को शुरुआत के लिए कुछ विचार रखने के मैं I would request him. After that, Tulsi Divas ji, I think the topic is very broad, sir. Journey of civilizations and search for the soul. And what you said in the morning session already actually opens up the window in terms of your point of view, as well as the deeper discussions we have to go. अनि अडियन्समा चाहिँ नि हल्ला चाहिँ नि नगरेकै राम्रो मेरो विचारमा है. अब यतातिर ध्यान दिने अनिखेरि गफै गर्नु पर्यो, यसो बाहिर गइदिएको राम्रो जस्तो मलाई कता कता लाग्यो. अब म let me then ask Ashokji right away without any preliminary note to get into the topic, but I have a interesting way to begin our conversation, sir. आप वाजपेयी है और मैं दीक्षित हूँ और वहाँ दिवस हुनुहुन्छ. There is a link because the topic today is civilizational. Let me bring in something very personal for our discussion. Because in terms of nation state, I happen to be from Nepal. You happen to be from India. What is today India? What is today Nepal? And we are all right now locked into our primary identities that tend to be the nation state identity or national identity. Whereas the topic given to us is civilizational. And civilization goes way before the nation state. And civilization will continue far beyond the configurations that we have today. So, मलाई के लाग्यो भने एउटा भेरी पर्सनल नोटमा यो छलफल सुरु गरेको जस्तो लाग्यो. यहाँहरूले माफ गर्नुहुन्छ नै. आजभन्दा, and I'll speak in English, 137 years before today, my own clan of Pahade Brahmins, they come from the Karnali region into Kathmandu. They made good in the Darbar and they made some money. And then you could do some yagya. So where do you go for the fount of quote unquote civilization? The Vedic civilization is Banaras. So my seventh ancestor, whose name was Siromani, went to Banaras and he did a special yagya. And these are apparently even 130 years ago in Banaras, the tradition was already getting lost of doing the great yagyas, Mahayagyas. And so my ancestors went in the search of what was known as Mahamopadhyaya. Mahamopadhyaya ke ढूंढ के, and they collected all the paperwork required, which were already lost because people had stopped doing such Mahayagyas. And the famous Shastri of the day, his name was Sri Gangadhar Shastri. और उसके असिस्टेंट थे बामनाचार्य. सो दे डिड यज्ञ, एंड ये पहाड़ के पहाड़ी ब्राह्मण को पदवी मिला दीक्षित. दीक्षा होम करके दीक्षा करके दीक्षित बन गए. ये सब तो कोई कोई लोग जानकारी है. लेकिन दूसरा एक बात है, मेरा सेवेंथ एंसेस्टर वांटेड टू डू अ सेपरेट yagya, the next one, because there are apparently 7 great yagyas, and the 5th one is called the Vajpayee yagya. और मेरा 7th ancestor ने प्लान किया था, लेकिन अफसोस वो 2-3 महीने बाकी था 137 years ago to do the great yagya in Banaras when he passed away. So मैं ओपनिंग के लिए ये कहूँगा कि मेरे दाएं में है अशोक वाजपेयी जी, मैं यहाँ हूँ एक दीक्षित, नेपाल के पहाड़ी ब्राह्मण. कहाँ से एक लिंकेजेस बन गए हैं बनारस से. ये बनारस से सिर्फ बनारस में it need not be limited there. It could be Lhasa, it could be Calcutta, it could be Guwahati, it could be Muzaffarpur, it could be Shigatse. But it happens to be Banaras, where our lineages are somehow linked in the sense that had my 7th ancestor not passed away 2 months too early, I would have been a Vajpayee. Is all I can tell you. So मुझे मालूम नहीं कनक मणि वाजपेयी सुनने में कैसे लगता है, लेकिन हो सकता था. With that, as an introduction to the great civilizational continuities that we carry, rather than say anything more, I would like to pass the mic to Ashok ji to speak his mind to this topic, and then to Tulsi ji.
Well, Kanak Marji, although my surname is Vajpayee, I have never performed any Vajpayee Yagya. So it is ill-deserved, merely by genealogy, not otherwise. I'm told that in the Vajpayee Yagya, in the Vedi that you pay, there used to be some stairs also built. The stairs stop in the middle. They go nowhere. So I thought this is a very good metaphor for Vajpayee like us. We climb up and go nowhere. Huh. I mean, we reach out nowhere. So that's an interesting metaphor in the first place. Secondly, many years ago, I took a visit of the south of India, and we happened to be in Chidambaram. And we happened to be when one of the Dainik Charyas were being performed. You know, the Lord has to be bathed and has to be clothed and has to be offered food, etc. So there was a gentleman next to us who, and the ceremony was too long and a bit boring for my young children. So I was about to make an exit. But he somehow came to know that I am Vajpayee. So he said, look, this temple belongs to Dikshitars. And you are a Kankuj Brahmin. How can you leave? So your ancestors stopped me Hey, Vajpayee, from leaving the Chidambaram temple until the Charya was completed. So I pay you back. The other things is that while, as I was said in the initial remarks this morning, I think there are two, three things which you must keep in mind. There are very few civilizations that the world has invented. Homo sapiens have invented. There are hundreds of cultures, thousands of cultures. Even the Indian civilization contains many, many cultures, linguistic cultures, regional cultures, uh, religious cultures, etc. But if you look at the beginning of this civilization, then you're struck by the utter plurality, which, which starts right in the beginning. You have four Vedas, not one holy book. You have 18 Upanishads. You have 6 classical schools of philosophy. You have 2 Mahakavyas. And you have 330, or I don't know how many, 33 koti devatas. And actually, at one point, it seemed that the civilization's divine population was larger than its human population. Because I don't think India had 33 crore people in that period. So you are struck by this. You're also struck by the other fact that this plurality then moves on. So you have a plurality of religions. I mean, we are the most multi-religious country perhaps in the world. We are the second largest Muslim country in the world. We have Hinduism is one of the religions, but we have Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism.
Even Hinduism is much more diverse than is being taught.
Yeah, sure. I'll come to that. So you have 4 religions which India and this civilization invented. And 4 religions came from outside: Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and the Parsis, whatever that religion is called. Languages. My friend Ganesh Devi conducted a people's survey of India, merely the nation state India, I mean, not the civilizational India. And it turned out that there are more than 700 languages and dialects. So we are the most multilingual, multi-religious, multi-cuisine, multi-costume, multi-custom. So I'm very fond of saying that in this civilization, nothing is singular. Neither God, nor language, nor belief, nor vision, nor dream. That if anything emerges as singular, sooner or later, it will become plural. So, one of the civilizational definitions of this South Asian civilization, if you like, is its plurality, the irrepressible plurality. One. Two, its openness. So you have, look at this civilization. You take any of the arts. In visual arts, you have the Gandhar style of sculpture, deeply influenced by the Greeks. As you come nearer, in the 18th, 19th century, 17th, you have the miniature painting. And the miniature painting comes from Persia. Music, Hindustani classical music, is very heavily indebted to Persian music. And then in the let's take the Arabic and the Persian links create a new language, Urdu, which is an entirely new language born in India. So if you keep on looking at this, there is a certain openness. Then there is a third accommodation. That is, हमारे यहाँ एक हिंदी में बड़े आचार्य हुए हैं, आचार्य रामचंद्र शुक्ल. उन्होंने एक पद का इस्तेमाल किया था, विरुद्धों का सामंजस्य, which is that you contain the contradictions. Opposite views are allowed to coexist. One view is not allowed to dominate. It should allow space for other views that there are. So, in a manner of speaking, there was a republic, if you like, of imagination, of ideas. There was a democracy of languages, literatures, etc. And if I mean, unless you stop me, I'll keep on speaking. No, huh? You know, you have to do that because I carry on, then I forget what is happening. So you have a situation in which actually, come to think of it, sometimes it appears to me that you can only define this civilization by saying what it is not. It is not a Semitic civilization, which means it is not a civilization based on a singular religion or a language. It is not a civilization in which one central view, there is no centrality, as it were. There are all kinds of elements flowing in and out. There's no centrality which dominates or which should be allowed to dominate. And there are any number of creative expressions and articulations in which this plurality survives, sustains itself, get nurtured. Yeah.
May I pick up on two terms you used, which are mellifluous and energizing? Because you overall, the topic that Tulsi Diwasji, yourself, and myself have been given is a daunting topic to talk of civilizations, which is everything and which is nothing. And in that sense, you chose to pick up the plurality, going back in time, not a plurality in one instance, but going back centuries and millennia. So the term you used was, one is utter plurality, and the other is irrepressible plurality. And I believe that what we need to do in South Asia, as the market forces move in, as the nation states become powerful, is how to save this plurality, because our humanity and the excitement of our lives from Nepal Mandal to Hastinapur is the excitement of plurality, and how to save that plurality. And in that, before I go to now I've become kind of a moderator without being nominated moderator, but before going to Tulsi Diwasi, I'll add some ideas to what you suggested, sir. I feel beyond the Ved, the Upanishad, beyond the ingress of Urdu, the development of Hindi, Braj Bhasha, Bengali, etc., all of the everything that brings us together into talking about civilization, I think there are certain elements that we tend not to speak about, which is, for example, the aroma, the smell of spices, the fact that we use water for ablution across South Asia in the morning or at any other time of the day. From that to so many shared histories that are not written at all, but there are linkages. So I like to think of South Asia, and we talked about it briefly in the morning. South Asia, firstly, why do I use the term South Asia? I think it's important to get that out of the way. India is the civilization that everybody has accepted. But since 1947, India is also a nation state. So we have to deal with that contradiction, that we're talking about something that is 2 millennia and more old, or 3, 4, 5. But then we're talking about, when we say, oh, Indian history, we're locked into the Indian history of post 47 most of the time. Some open-minded people will think of Indian history as everything that was meant before 1947. But so uh, willy-nilly, we have to also unfortunately use a imported term, which is South Asia. Because when, and India is actually so large, it is already most of South Asia. But there are parts of South Asia that are not part of the Indian nation state. So we are being handed a little bit of a problem, a problem of connotation. What do we mean when we say India civilization, Nepal civilization? At one level, India and Nepal, if you use the word Indic rather than Indian, then Indic civilization can be owned, at least speaking in the English language, by everybody, even from Tibet, even from Gandhar, even from Arakan. But then, if we come down to the present and we say, what is Indian civilization? I propose that we must look at Indian civilization as the historical civilization and not fall into the trap of thinking of India, the nation state. And इतना ही था मैंने in the beginning I wanted to share. I turn to Tulsi Diwas, well-known cultural historian and a cultural activist, very much involved in folk tales. And one of the things, again, Ashok Bajpayee ji and I were talking in the morning, was about the power of the folk, which is tends to be in the term of classical studies, they tend to be put aside. But at least in Nepal, folk is very close to the surface of our national culture. So may I now turn and to Tulsi Diwas to take the topic whichever way you chose to.
Okay. Thank you. मैले चाहिँ तपाईहरुले अलिकति स्थापित अलिकति माथिल्लो तहको र माथिल्लो वर्गको कुराहरुलाई बढी प्रकाशमा ल्याएको मैले अनुभव गरे। म चाहिँ नेपाली लोकवार्ता, लोक संस्कृति, लोक साहित्य सँग प्रत्यक्ष रूपले सम्बन्धित भएको कारणले गर्दा रिटन मात्र हैन, ओरल कल्चर and orality, the importance of orality लाई बढ्ता महत्त्व दिनुपर्ने कुरालाई बढी जोड दिन चाहन्छु। र बहुसंख्यक जनता जसको संस्कृति, जसको सभ्यता, जसको सिर्जना बढी मौखिक रूपमा सुरक्षित र अझै पनि विस्तारित भएको हाम्रो दक्षिण एसियामा अथवा भारत र नेपालमा मात्र होइन, अन्य राष्ट्रहरूमा पनि बढी क्रियाशील भएको मैले अनुभव गरेको छु। तर यसलाई सम्बन्धित क्षेत्रबाट स्वीकृति दिने काम, माया गर्ने बेग्लै कुरा हो, तर अवधारणात्मक रूपमा स्पष्ट भएर स्वीकृति दिने काम भने कम भएको छ। त्यसैले एउटा अवधारणा म के भन्न चाहन्छु भने बहुसंख्यक जनताको, बहुसंख्यक मान्छेको, त्यो राष्ट्रको बहुसंख्यक मान्छेको सभ्यता वा संस्कृति तपाई भन्नुहुन्छ भने उनीहरुका लोक कथा, उनीहरुका लोकगीत, उनीहरुको लोक विश्वास, उनीहरुको लोक आस्था, उनीहरुको लोक नाच र लोकगीत, उनीहरुको चाड पर्वमा प्रत्यक्ष रूपले सुरक्षित मात्र होइन, संरक्षित मात्र होइन, अहिलेसम्म जीवन्त भएर अगाडि बढिरहेको अनुभव गरिरहेको छु। अथवा म यसो भनौं, खाली इतिहासलाई हामीले लेखनमा मात्रै सीमित गरेर बन्दी बनायौं, तर इतिहासलाई मुक्ति दिनको निमित्त मौखिक परम्परालाई पनि स्वीकार गरेर लिखित रूपमा प्राप्त नभएको तथ्य र सत्यलाई मौखिक रूपमा प्राप्त भएको तथ्य र सत्यको आधारमा स्वीकृति दिएर स्कुल, कलेज र विश्वविद्यालयमा पनि
पढ्ने र पढाउने मात्रै होइन, यो चेतना जागृत गरेर हामीले अगाडि बढाउनु अनिवार्य आवश्यक भएको अनुभव गरेको छु। त्यसैले म के भन्न चाहन्छु त भन्दा बहुसंख्यक जनताको इतिहास अहिलेसम्म लेखिएन, शासकहरूको इतिहास बढी लेखियो। इतिहास शासकहरूको मात्रै होइन, जनताको पनि इतिहास हो र सर्वसाधारण जनताको पनि इतिहास लेखिनुपर्छ र बहुसंख्यक जनताको इतिहास आउनुपर्छ र त्यो आउनको निमित्त, त्यो ल्याउनको निमित्त हामीले कन्जुस्याइ गरौँ र पुस्तकहरूमा मात्रै बढी सीमित भएर ज्ञानलाई माथि बढायौँ। अब सर्वसाधारण जनताको इतिहास, उनीहरूको संस्कृति, उनीहरूको सभ्यता, उनीहरूको रहनसहन, उनीहरूको रीतिरिवाज, उनीहरूको विश्वासलाई हामीले सङ्कलित गरेर एक अर्कामा तुलनात्मक रूपले हेर्ने र एक अर्कालाई स्वीकृति दिने उदारता र चौडा छाती हामीले विकसित गर्नु अनुभव छ, विशेष गरेर नेपाल र भारतमा। जहाँ मैले भारत त्यत्तिकै धनी छ लोकवार्ताको क्षेत्रमा, तर यसलाई विश्वविद्यालयहरूमा, ठुला कलेजहरूमा एउटा मनोरञ्जनको साधन बनाएर प्रचार र प्रसार गरेर रेडियो र टेलिभिजनमा प्रयोग त हुन्छ, तर अवधारणात्मक स्पष्टताका साथ त्यसलाई ग्रहण गर्ने र त्यसको महत्त्वलाई स्वीकार गर्ने काम अहिलेसम्म हामीले राष्ट्रिय एउटा राज स्तरमा पनि गर्ने हिम्मत गरिसकेका छैनौँ। अब हामीलाई त्यो गर्नु जनताको तहमा, जनस्तरमा, पिपल्स लेभलमा कल्चरल एक्सचेन्जको कुरा मात्र होइन, समझदारीको कुरा विकसित गर्नु। त्यसै कारण मैले पटक पटक यस्ता बहसहरूमा भन्ने गरेको के छु भने खालि औपचारिक रूपमा सरकारी तहमा गरिएका काम कुराहरूलाई मात्रै ध्यान नदिकन जनस्तरमा, पिपल्स लेभलमा एक अर्काको सांस्कृतिक ढङ्गले समझदारी विकसित गर्नु र त्यो सांस्कृतिक सम्पन्नतालाई स्वीकार गरेर मान्यता दिने काम गरिनु पनि अनिवार्य आवश्यक छ भन्ने कुरामा म प्रष्ट छु। र यसरी मैले किन त्यसो भने म तपाईलाई एउटा नेपाली लोकगीत छ,
यो साउन्ड बाहिरबाट आइरहेको छ नेपालबाट, प्लिज हेरिदिनुहोस्। सरी है दाइ।
र अर्को कुरा बुद्धि दाइले जुन पनि
मेरो आवाज सानो भयो कि क्या हो, म त्योभन्दा ठुलो बनाऊ?
कुर्नुहोस् एकै मिनट, त्यो अर्को फिड अफ गरिदिनुहोस् न।
त्यो तपाईँहरूको आवाज आइरहेको छ बिचमा बेला बेलामा। यो मैले किन त्यसो भनेको भने नि, त्यो अलिखित इतिहासको अवधारणा जरुरी छ। त्यसैले अहिले हामीले विश्वविद्यालयहरूमा पनि नेपाली पढाउँदा लोक साहित्य पढाउने काम सुरु गरिदिएको छ। मैले नै जोड गरेर त्यो गर्न थालेको छु र अनि म्युजिकहरूमा पनि, डान्सेसहरूमा पनि, फोक डान्स एन्ड फोक म्युजिकहरू पनि कोर्सेसहरूमा राखेर अगाडि बढाउने कामहरू पनि सुरु गरे। वास्तवमा हामीले चाहिँ मस्तिष्कको या माथि बुर्जाको कुरा बढी गर्यौं, तल जगको कुरा कम गरेका छौँ र अब जगको कुरा गर्न
दाइ म यहाँ एकैछिन म कुरा यता अशोक बाजपेयीतिर लगौँ। हामीले त कुरा भर्खर थालेको, तपाईँले यो विषयमा मात्रै कुरा गर्नु तपाईँ भनेर भनिहाल्नुभयो अघि। सिभिलाइजेसन कुरा त मा त उदार भइकन सबै पक्ष हेर्नुपर्छ। तपाईँले भनेको उच्च बौद्धिक कुरा पनि गर्नुपर्छ होला सायद, तर तपाईँले भने जस्तो लोक भाषाको कुरा बिर्सिने त कुरै आउँदैन। अब त्यसै सन्दर्भमा म भनिहालौँ, अघि सुरुमा पनि अशोकजीले कुरा गर्दाखेरि ही स्पोक अबाउट गणेश देवी. Ganesh Devi is promoting the study of the linguistic, overpowering linguistic heritage of the subcontinent and India in particular. So may I ask him to respond? You were following him more or less about the power and the variety of Lok Bhakha, and that has been neglected in both the official history writing as well as in the curriculum. As a result, the texture of this incredible subcontinent is lost when you do not pay attention to the people on the ground and their culture and their experiences. How do you respond to the point he is making?
Let me make 2 or 3 points by way of response. While it is true that this Indic civilization had a very strong stream of orality, let us not forget that similarly it had a very strong sense of textuality. It is not as if everything was left to the oral sort of stream. We created the first grammar in the world. We created the first book of first theory of dramatics. We created the first book on sexology. And these are written documents. They were not oral. So one, it is not as if everything was oral. Two, in India, in the realm of history, there has been in the last 30, 40 years, a movement which is called subaltern history, which really takes into account the people's history rather than the dynastic history. So there has been a strong trend among scholars and teachers to teach history as people's history rather than, this is the second. The third is, as we sit here today in the India International Center, about the same time, an exhibition of about 40 Gaun Pradhan artists must have opened, organized by the Raza Foundation. Now, these Gaun Pradhans are the genealogical sort of racial singers of the Gauns. But they converted their musical memories into visual memories. And an exhibition is taking place. So this is a phenomena which has happened in Bharat Bhavan, where a singer was brought by Swaminathan, and the singer became a painter. So a music was converted into visual art, and now there are something like 80 practitioners. You will be amazed to see the subtlety, the sophistication, the detailing of these folk and tribal artists. So this is one part. Now, however, the fact remains that the textual gets a dominance over orality. And there have been institutional efforts to document the oral and to, but if I give you some examples, there is a tradition of theater in Kerala called Kudiyattam. It is recognized by the UNESCO as an part of the intangible heritage of mankind. This tradition is perhaps the only living tradition in the world of theater unbroken for more than 1,000 years. And even today, there are Kudiyattam performances which last through the night. And it is said that some of the plays of the great Sanskrit playwright Bhasa have survived in Kudiyattam rather than in textual material. And somebody retrieved as many as 18 plays from the Kudiyattam performances. So there are, I mean, it's not true to say that it is, the orality has, in fact, today, India's horrible politics is basically expressed through orality. I mean, the people who are making the mark make it, apart from their costumes, they make it basically through orality.
Yes.
So orality has all kinds
Both
of
sides.
permutations and combinations. The other thing, I like to give you a list of, shall we say, accidents in history which changed the course of civilization
Okay.
in some way.
Hmm.
One example, Akbar commissioned a royal translation of Valmiki's Ramayana into Persian.
Hmm.
It was a royal commission, and those days there were no books to be printed, or so there was a manuscript, which in the good old royal Mughal tradition has to be illustrated. So artists were called from Gwalior, from Kashmir, from Rajasthan, and they all came with their own regional, conventions. But you can't have a royal manuscript illustrated in several different styles. So they sat together
Mhm.
and they developed a common style, which is now known as the Mughal style.
Mm.
So a school is born, a classical school of painting is born out of the need to translate
Mhm.
into Persian a Sanskrit Mahakavya.
Mhm.
Look at how many things are happening in terms of a civilizational. Same thing. Many years ago, the Iranian Cultural Center, people like me inaugurate and open and give keynote address. This is what falls a Dhawal Keshi. Must have experienced it
Yes.
yourself. So I was invited to open a library in Iranian Cultural Center in Delhi. The library is called Nawal Kishore Library. Now, in an Iranian Cultural Center,
Naval Kishore.
they sent me some material which told me that in the 19th century, more than 2,000 books were published in India in Persian, which number is larger than the books in Persian published in Persia itself.
Uh-huh.
And the person who did it, most of the
Translation.
publishing, was Nawal Kishore Press of Lucknow.
Wow.
So in order to sort of commemorate him, they have named the library.
Wow.
Now, the first grammar of Persian was written by a Brahmin scholar of Persian in Vijayanagar Empire.
Okay. Wow.
So the
Might I pick that up and go back to Tulsi ji? I think there is no linearity when we're talking even about oral culture. There are so many aspects, and Ashok ji has also highlighted some. I would like to bring the theme back to Nepal, in the sense, how could Nepal contribute in the South Asian sphere, including India, because Nepal has been able to protect its orality because of accidents of history more than other parts of South Asia, perhaps. So, is there something that we can contribute to the preservation of orality and the preservation of and valuation of lives as lived in the village terrace? Culturally, how would we do that? Because, as I suggest, we are probably closer to it than many parts of cosmopolitan South Asia.
मैले अघि पनि भने यसो त यो नेपालमा मात्र होइन पुरा दक्षिण एसियामा नै यो समस्या छ अनि अघि मैले के भने इतिहास शासकहरूको मात्रै बढी लेखियो शासित मान्छेहरूको लेखिएन सर्वसाधारण जनताको इतिहास कम लेखियो मलाई भन्नुको अर्थ के छ भने संस्कृतिमा सभ्यतामा पनि माथि बस्नेहरूको भूमिका बढ्दा देखा पर्यो माथि बस्ने भनेको त्यो तह जुन एउटा बनाइयो नि त्यहाँ त्यो शासकै बढी भयो शासकको परिवारकै बढी बढ्यो, शासकहरूसँग मिल्नेहरूको नै बढी भयो। तर सर्वसाधारण जनताको इतिहास नहुन्जेल कुनै पनि देशको इतिहास पूर्ण रूपमा हुँदैन र खण्डित हुन्छ र शासकको इतिहास मात्रै हुन्छ र सर्वसाधारण जनताको इतिहास त्यहाँ देखिँदैन र आउँदैन। त्यसको निमित्त शासकको इतिहासको निमित्त पनि हामीलाई शिलालेख अनि कागज पत्रहरू आवश्यक हुन्छ भने सर्वसाधारण जनताको तिनै शिलालेख हुन् तिनका लोकगीत र लोकनाच, उखान तुक्का र गाउँ खाने कथाहरू। ती आफैमा प्रमाण हुन् भन्ने पक्षमा म बढी छु र त्यसको निमित्त हामीले खोज र अनुसन्धान उपयुक्त ढङ्गले गर्न सकेका छैनौँ र दुवैको जब संयुक्त रूपमा जोडिन्छ तब त्यो देशको इतिहास पूर्ण रूपमा आउँछ र शासकको पनि शासितको पनि पूर्ण रूपमा आउन सक्छ र त्यसरी ल्याउनको निमित्त हामीले इतिहासको अवधारणालाई पनि विश्वविद्यालय र कलेजमा केमा सीमित गर्यौं भने आधार के त भन्दा लेखिएको आधार, लेखी पाउने पुरानो आधार। मानौ त्योदेखि त्यो पाइएन भने इतिहासै थिएन। हाम्रो धारणा के हो? लिखित आधारमा मात्रै प्रमाणित गर्ने दृष्टिकोण गरियो भने निश्चित रूपमा पढे लेखेका
तर दाइले भनेको त्यो आइडियल सिचुएसनलाई बाडाबाट हामी झन्झन पर जाँदैछौँ नि त। तपाईँहरू जस्तोको चाहिँ क्रियाशीलता त छँदैछ, तर पनि झन्झन पर होइन त। हामीहरू यसै त इतिहासै लेख्न छोडिसके।
झन्झन पर होइन, यी मैले उठाएको कुराबाट नजिक हुन खोजिरहेको छु र त्यो ग्याप मेट्न खोजिरहेको छु। एक पक्षीय कुरा मात्रै आएर हुँदैन, एक पक्षीय दृष्टिकोणले हेरेर मात्रै हुँदैन, बहुपक्षीय हेरे र सबैलाई समावेश गर्ने र सबैको इतिहास, सबैको सभ्यता, सबैको संस्कृतिलाई त्यो देशको सांस्कृतिक व्यक्तित्वसँग जोड्नु अनिवार्य रूपले आवश्यक हुन्छ र बहुसंख्यक जनता त्यसैका त्यस दृष्टिकोणले संस्कृति चाहिँ चुलीमा बसेर, चुचुरोमा बसेर, अर्नो फेदीमा भएका धेरै जसको स्पेस त्यहाँका कर्ताहरूलाई चाहिँ बेवास्ता गरेर हेर्ने परम्परावादी दृष्टिकोणको विरुद्धमा उभिन खोजेको त्यसै कारण हुँ म। र अहिले म के भनिरहेको छु त भन्दा इतिहासलाई पूर्णता दिनको निमित्त, इतिहासलाई सम्पूर्ण रूप बनाउनको निमित्त यो दृष्टिकोणलाई हामीले स्वीकार गरेर हामीले के गर्नु पर्यो त भन्दा यथार्थलाई, यस यथार्थलाई बौद्धिक रूपमा पनि स्वीकृति दिनुपर्छ भन्ने कुरालाई बढ्ता जोड दिएको हुँ मैले। र अनि हामीले के गरेका छौँ, जब लिखित रूपमा पाउँदैनौँ तब हामी अलिखित रूपमा गइरहेका छौँ। मैले भने नपाएर जाने होइन, पहिल्यैदेखि त्यसलाई स्वीकार गरेर लानुपर्छ। त्यसलाई पनि एउटा हामीले विश्वसनीय तथ्याङ्क रूपमा ग्रहण गर्ने संस्कृति विकसित गर्नु अनिवार्य आवश्यक छ भनेर मैले त्यो भन्न खोजेको हो। र अनि त्यसमा पनि हाम्रोमा चाहिँ हाम्रा जात जातिका छन्, तिनका आफ्ना भाषा छन्, तिनीहरू आफ्ना संस्कृति, आफ्ना गीत र नाच र आफ्ना किसिमका उखान तुका र आफ्ना किसिमका लोक नाटक, विश्वास, आस्था, चलन आदिहरू छन्। तिनीहरूको जानकारी हामीसँग कम छ। हाम्रो विश्वविद्यालय र स्कुलमा पढाउने काम पनि कम गरिएको छ। हामीले जहिले पनि इतिहास पढ्दा जसका शिलालेख छन् तिनकै माथि इतिहास बतायौँ हामीले। तर यसरी मौखिक रूपमा अंकित भएको जो इतिहास छ त्यसलाई बेवास्ता गरेर हामीले के गर्यौँ भने आफूलाई चिन्नुबाट वञ्चित गर्यौँ भन्ने कुरा मेरो छ।
थ्याङ्क यू दाइ। एकदम सशक्त हिसाबले र कसैले पनि यसलाई यसमा चाहिँ सही नथाप्ने कुरै छैन। अब हामीले we've been given a very difficult topic and this lady is already eyeing me and asking me to end the session. Thank you so much. I have been looking at you. I'll just turn to Ashok ji for one issue. You had a list of turning points in history and I don't want to miss out. There are a few there, but give us one more turning point in history and then we'll come to the end of the session.
Well, in terms of recording history, which is the point that Devasa has raised so powerfully, let us look at the historical narrative that pertains to India's freedom struggle. Before that, and of course, when the British brought the so-called historical perspective to India, The story was of the kings and dynasties and this, that, and the other. But when Gandhi's movement started, his Satyagraha movement, Namak Satyagraha and Asahayog Andolan, and finally Bharat Chodo Andolan, these were all against the British, against the British rule. They were against the dynasty or whatever you want.
Yeah.
But they were people's movement. And they were meticulously recorded. And I mean, in terms of intellectual and even polemical analysis, this was done. So it is not as if history has always been dominated
Yes.
by the. So there have been moments. This is a moment when you are turning the other way around. So therefore, there were two historical narratives. The colonial historians of India were writing one kind of history. The so-called nationalist historians of India were writing, Pandit Sundar Lal and such like, were writing another narrative of India. So there were counter narratives, which again fits in my theme of plurality, that there is no single, it is true that in the universities and colleges, etc., this notion of orality is not
Yes.
brought out as uh, as contextually relevant as it is. But in creative expression and an intellectual pursuit, orality has found its way.
Then I might suggest in conclusion that perhaps one answer for a region as vast, as complicated, as variety ridden as South Asia is that you cannot, even if we speak of orality, even if we speak of written history, it cannot be linked to any centralized space. For
Yes.
example, we're talking about the Kalinga festival. I think Kalinga, Odisha should have its own worldwide quality center of the study of history, of orality, or whatever. Likewise, it should happen in Nepal. It should happen in Guwahati. It should happen in Sindh. Because I think the moment we start thinking all of this has to be saved, but in a centralized manner, then you lose the soul. And may I now, with apologies to the audience, हामीलाई चाहिँ नि मलाई लागेको थियो योभन्दा अढी समय पाइएला भनेर उहाँले आँखा तरेर बसिरहनु भएको छ छेउमा त्यसैले अब त्यो अन्ततिर त लाग्नै पर्यो अशोकजीलाई पनि धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद तुलसी दिवसजीलाई पनि धेरै धन्यवाद अब यत्रो ब्रह्माण्डको विषय अब हामीले चाहिँ नि खालि डुबुल्की मात्र पनि मारेन जस्तो लागिरहेछ मलाई तर पनि इन अ वे अब इन्डिक कल्चरको कुरा गऱ्यौँ. Let me say one thing in my own way of summarizing. आफूले नै टोपी ओढी मोडरेटरको यही समराइज नभनौँ मैले लिएको तन्तु भनौँ न. South Asia is too diverse to be put into one stream. Even written history can never be put into one stream. Oral history is hundreds of thousands of oral histories going in parallel. So our job to save the topic, the soul, saving the soul of civilization. To save the soul, we have to go into multiplicities. And this automatic tendency of the market and of the nation state to centralize, that is probably the biggest danger for South Asia as we speak today. And so the answer would be pluralism of the past to be protected for pluralism of the future. And one example of that pluralism I would like to present to you as we end this session, which is if you Google just Ustad Bismillah Khan and Ustad Velayat Khan, just those two names, and write More Panagata Pe. You see that clip. It's a 5-8 minute clip where these two ustads, one is a Shenai player, the other is a sitar badak, but they are pleasantly immersed in each other, singing and playing More Panagatape, essentially about Krishna Bhagwan. To me, that is the nuance of our civilizational history, which includes Nepal. In my view, it includes everything from Arakan to Balochistan to Sri Lanka to Tibet. Somewhere or the other, we're all touched by that 7-minute clip. And if we can keep that going, that flavor, I think we have saved the plurality of South Asia. May I end with those words? Thank you. Thank you. अब हामीले के गर्नुपर्छ हजुर?
Thank you so much, sir. We are really blessed and honored. I know the time limitation. Thank you. And heading forward, I would like to request our official team member, Kaling Literally Festival founder Ms. Prachi Nayak and director Ms. Ranjana Nirola to honor our distinguished personality with token of love. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now coming to the next session. Thank you so much. Now we're inside Hall 1. I would like to request our speakers to see the program schedules and time and be in the respective hall. अब कविता वाचन हुँदैछ हल 2 मा अग्रज कविहरूको सेसन चलिरहेको छ एकचोटी सबैजनाले आफ्नो सेसन हेरिदिनु हुन विनम्र अनुरोध गर्दछु हल 2 मा Now we are Ladies and gentlemen, coming up next, we have now a feast for your eyes and ears with the session India-Nepal Civilization Relationship, the Way Forward, for which our moderator is Mr. Vineet Kumar and the speakers are Mr. Ranjit Rai and Mr. Yuvraj Gimire. Please welcome them with big round of applause.